It's 5:05 and welcome into a Wednesday edition of the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110 99.3 WBT. I'm Nick Craig. Good morning to you. At yesterday's April Council of State meeting, North Carolina Commissioner for Agriculture Steve Troxler called on the General Assembly for additional funding to help rebuild the state's Forest Service as wildfires continue to burn across the state. He made similar comments in the meeting that took place last month in March, once again stating that there are still over 100 open positions in the North Carolina Forest Service, along with worn-out helicopters, bulldozers, and other equipment to battle more than 1,823 wildfires that have burned across the state. Particularly, and as we have been talking about this entire week thus far, particularly in the western half where Hurricane Helene brought such devastation last September. The 1,823 wildfires is a 104% increase over the average wildfires, which is just under 900 the state normally sees in the month of March. The North Carolina Forest Service Assistant Commissioner Greg Hicks told the Council of State members in their meeting yesterday. Hicks presented the agency heads with a rundown of the state's fire locations and containment levels, and I do have some good news to pass along this morning. The Black Cove fire, which has burned just shy of 4,000 acres, was sitting around the mid-30s in terms of containment, while we learned yesterday afternoon that fire is now 93% contained by a mix of some of the rain earlier this week and continued efforts by forest fire officials has brought that up to 93% containment. The Deep Woods fire, which is burning over 3,500 acres, is now 60% contained, and the Fishhook fire remains at 100% containment. There are some other fires burning around the state, a couple in Swain County, Haywood, and Transylvania as well. Most of those sit in the 30 and 40% containment. The one in Haywood County burning 1,800 acres, only 24% contained there. And although recent rains have been a welcome sight, Hicks said that they still have the month of April to get through before the spring wildfire season ends on May the 1st. The state is also monitoring the Blue Ridge fire in southern Georgia. Steve Troxler said unfortunately 12 homes were lost to fires, those in Polk County, which normally does not happen, and he expects this season to get worse before it gets better, saying that there will likely be another dry period in the fall during which fires could ramp up once again, and that's why he's asking the legislature for help filling those over 100 Forest Service open positions and purchasing new equipment. Democrat Governor Josh Stein assured Troxler that he would be in discussions with the General Assembly to seek their input on funding requests. Troxler is scheduled to hold a press conference about a crop loss disaster program coming up this afternoon. We'll have some details on what that's going to look like coming up here in just a few minutes. It's now 5:08. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. We are continuing to track leadership changes out of the North Carolina Senate. We've got some big news to pass along to you this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Brianna Kramer, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us with the details. A brand new Senate Majority Leader introduced yesterday afternoon. Brianna, what do the details look like?
Yes, that's right. Senator Michael Lee of New Hanover County has been elected as the new majority leader in the North Carolina Senate. And this follows just 1 week after Senator Paul Newton announced his retirement last Tuesday. And by Wednesday, that was his last day serving as majority leader. And now just about 1 week later, we have a new majority leader in the North Carolina Senate.
Brandon, you're in and out of the General Assembly, of course, this busy time of year that we're in right now. Can you walk us through some of the roles and responsibilities of the Senate Majority Leader? What does their day-to-day look like in comparison to just a regular member of the North Carolina Senate? What are some of their responsibilities?
Sure, yeah. So there's a bunch of different leadership positions, and the top one is the president. So Senator Phil Berger is the president of the Senate. And so he's kind of working hand in hand with him and with the other leaders to organize the caucus, the Republican caucus, and make sure that their priorities are resonating with all of the Republican caucus and the members, and just kind of prioritizing what their agenda is for this session and what is going to be in their budget proposal. So there's really just a variety of things that he's doing hand in hand with the other leaders.
Now, for Senator Lee, he was previously the head of the very influential and very important Education Committee. We know education funding and issues continue to be a big-time issue across the state of North Carolina. So he's already been in a relatively high-up leadership role in regards to his previous work on education.
Yeah, that's right. The Education Committee, and he's also serving as one of the chairmen on the Senate Appropriations and Base Budget Committee as well. So he's already been in many leadership roles, high up positions within the Senate. So it comes as no surprise, as they spend more time within the General Assembly, they can work their way up into these leadership roles as they develop relationships and get more experience from within. So he definitely has a lot of background experience. He's been there for a while, since 2014. So he's currently on his 5th term. So he's got the experience, and he also serves on the Commerce and Insurance Committee, Healthcare, Judiciary, and then Rules and Operations. So really some of the big ones that we hear get mentioned quite a bit when it comes to pushing through legislation to the Senate floor.
That's, I think, important to remind our listeners this morning, right? You've got these two separate groups. You've got the House, you've got the Senate. And Brianna, even though both of them are controlled by Republicans, we've seen in recent years the priorities necessarily aren't the same coming out of both of these chambers. And I'm sure that's something that the new Senate Majority Leader is going to be dealing with, not only with Senate Leader Phil Berger, but probably some of his Republican colleagues across the building in the House.
Yes, that's right. We've seen that in past years where they don't align on all of their Republican priorities and what they want to get accomplished that session. For example, casinos or gambling or medical marijuana. These are things that some Republicans have focused on, while maybe the House or the Senate has shied away from some of these issues. And so, yes, they will have to work across the aisle and make sure to work with their colleagues in the House as well, because that will be important when it comes to getting stuff actually accomplished within the full General Assembly.
And of course, things are looking a little bit different at the General Assembly this year. Republicans still holding leadership in the House and the Senate, no longer a supermajority for them in the House, but a brand new governor in Josh Stein. We have yet to see this whole budget process unfold with Governor Stein, same political party as the previous governor, Roy Cooper, still a Democrat serving in that position. But at least as it seemed over the last few weeks, Brianna, a very different relationship between high ups in both the House and the Senate compared from Stein to Cooper. Very different thus far.
Absolutely. Yeah, we've seen that in just the past few months as people have taken on their new roles in state government. There's been a shift in the mood and shift in how things are operating with the new governor. I think things are off to a better start with the Democrat and Republican divide still. So they know they obviously need to work across the aisle when it comes to getting stuff passed through the governor's office. But yeah, definitely a different tone right now, and it seems like they're going to be able to get a lot accomplished with the House and the Senate together. Although, as you mentioned, that supermajority, that is no longer the case in the House. That is where we expect troubles to come up in the future as they work to possibly override. Because in the Senate, they will be able to override any vetoes from the governor, but not in the House, or they're going to have to work some magic and figure out numbers and some strategy if they want to get the numbers in order to override.
Brandon, you've got some quotes this morning from the new Senate Majority Leader. That's in your article this morning. Where can folks read those details?
Yeah, you can go to carolinajournal.com to read the latest there.
Brianna Kramer joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 5:14, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get a look at traffic on your hump day. A look at the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
And happy hump day to you, Nick.
Thanks, sir. It's 21 minutes past the hour. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Keeping our attention this morning on the State Agricultural Commissioner Steve Troxler. Farmers across North Carolina can now apply for financial aid under the Agriculture Crop Loss Disaster Program, according to Steve Troxler in an announcement yesterday afternoon. The program offers financial relief to farmers who suffered crop loss in 2024 due to Hurricane Helene, Tropical Storm Debbie, drought, and other severe weather conditions that may have existed across the state. Troxler said in a press conference yesterday afternoon, quote, "Our farmers are reeling from a disastrous 2024 season, so we are moving quickly to get this program up and running to get the money flowing to them. This funding is a lifeline as they look to restore their farms and their livelihoods." Several farmers have said that they would likely not be able to start the season without some form of disaster assistance, according to Troxler. Agricultural losses in 2024, including crop loss, infrastructure loss, and equipment loss, totaled almost $5 billion, a massive, massive amount of money here across North Carolina. The North Carolina Department of Agriculture is overseeing the statewide program as part of the Disaster Recovery Act of 2025, Part 1. That's House Bill 47, signed into law back a couple of weeks ago, which sets aside $524 million and was recently passed by the North Carolina General Assembly. Nearly $311 million of that was allocated specifically for farm relief across the state. The funds allocated by the Department of Agriculture for the program shall be distributed as following. $200 million will be designated for verifiable losses resulting from Hurricane Helene in the affected area, and $100 million will be used for verifiable losses from any agricultural disaster that took place last year, excluding Hurricane Helene. In addition, the department shall utilize any remaining funds as detailed in House Bill 47. Eligible farmers must have experienced a verified loss of agriculture or other sort of commodities due to a disaster last year. Additionally, the farm must be located in an affected area by a deemed disaster. The commodities must have been planted or raised before the date of the disaster as designated in the declaration for the county where the commodities are located, and losses being claimed must be verified. The program covers a wide variety of commodities, including specialty crops and tobacco. Growers are encouraged to review the complete list that has been made available online. Steve Troxler said, quote, "We know some farmers may not know the extent of the damage of their crops yet. Growing of nursery crops, fruit-bearing trees and bushes, and certainly horticultural crops may request a deadline extension to June of this year. This extension must be requested in the online application, which he did note is due May the 4th. The General Assembly intends to revisit agricultural needs after reviewing congressional disaster funding, with the Agricultural Commissioner saying, "I can't say how much I appreciate the legislature earmarking these timely funds in support of the farmers and other local food suppliers. We remain strong in agriculture in this state. We're an $111 billion industry, and we must maintain our ability to feed ourselves, and farmers are the ones who make that happen. As the population continues to grow, we're going to need all of our farmers focused on producing food and power to meet those demands. I'm hopeful these funds are going to be a shot in the arm for farmers and farms to build a bridge to the future." Farmers who are eligible for assistance can submit their application online at ncagr.gov, and they must have all of the appropriate paperwork that is listed on the website. Again, that's ncagr.gov, and there's also a hotline and some other information available for the Disaster Assistance Loan Program. We'll continue to track the details right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Keeping our attention in Raleigh this morning, state lawmakers have introduced the Ivermectin Access Act to make the drug available over the counter following national controversy regarding the drug during the COVID-19 pandemic. North Carolina lawmakers filed this legislation on Monday, the last day of March, that would make ivermectin accessible at pharmacies without a prescription. The legislation is sponsored by Representative Jonathan Allman out of Cabarrus County, Jeff Zenger out of Forsyth, Heather Ryan out of Lincoln, Neil Jackson out of Moore, and Michael Setzer out of Catawba County. Representative Allman saying, quote, "It's a 60-year-old Nobel Prize-winning drug, and I think it's got a lot of potential benefits that not a lot of people know about. I think we all saw the media apparatus and the medical industry come out during COVID and basically try and make everybody feel like you're going to turn into a horse if you take ivermectin. During the COVID-19 pandemic, many sought the drug as a treatment option following viral reports of its effectiveness and successful use by notable celebrities. The controversy emerged as public health officials denounced its use despite evidence of its safe and effective use against COVID-19 and other conditions. The FDA settled a lawsuit last year over its social media posts against the drug, which was developed in the 1970s, initially for animals in use in combating internal and external parasites. Widely regarded as a, quote, wonder drug, it was shortly thereafter approved for human use and today is used as an anti-parasitic agent as well. Its developers won the Nobel Prize in 2015. Representative Allman called it a miracle drug that has been around for decades with promising results for health issues like COVID or cancer, noting, quote, "I truly believe because we're under the emergency use authorization, if there would have been another therapeutic that would have been available and had been proven to use in helping with COVID-19, that they wouldn't have been able to move forward with the development of a vaccine." The COVID-19 vaccine was approved under the FDA's emergency use authorization, which is only allowed if no other viable treatment option exists. The General Assembly push comes just days after the Arkansas governor signed a bill into law legalizing over-the-counter ivermectin. Lawmakers in both South Carolina and West Virginia are pushing similar bills over the last couple of months as well that would also make it available for over-the-counter use. According to a recent study, ivermectin prescriptions soared during COVID-19, with nearly 3 million COVID-related prescriptions issued from 2020 to 2023, totaling over $272 million. Since the drug no longer has a patent, any company can manufacture it, resulting in its very much low costs in relation to other drugs that are available over prescription. We'll continue to track this legislation as it works its way through the North Carolina General Assembly right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour and, of course, on our website, carolinajournal.com, where it's now 5:29, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Time to get another look at the roadways on this Wednesday. Look at traffic with Boomer Von Cannon.
Thank you, Nick.
It's 5:36. Welcome back to the Carolina Journal News Hour. Good Wednesday morning to you. News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. Tracking some big news out of the General Assembly this morning. State Senator Michael Lee, the Republican out of New Hanover County, has been elected as the new majority leader of the North Carolina Senate. This is following the departure of former Senator Paul Newton. Lee has been in the state Senate since 2014 and is currently serving his fifth term while holding several leadership positions. In a press release yesterday, Senator Lee said, quote, "It is an honor to have the support and trust of my colleagues. Our caucus is filled with incredible individuals who bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to the General Assembly. I look forward to working with every caucus member to help accomplish their priorities and build on the last 14 years of successful policy achievements." Senator Paul Newton announced his retirement last Tuesday and served his last day in the North Carolina General Assembly just 1 week ago, last Wednesday. Reports indicate that he's taking a general counsel position over at UNC Chapel Hill. Senator Lee currently serves as the chairman of the State Appropriation/Base Budget, as well as Education and Higher Education Committees. He also serves on the Commerce and Insurance Committee, Healthcare Committee, Judiciary, and Rules and Operation Committees as well. Senate Leader Phil Berger, the Republican out of Rockingham County, said, quote, "Michael works day in and day out to do the best for his constituents. He is someone's every senator, Republican or Democrat, and can turn up for advice and mentorship. I am thankful for his willingness to step forward and to help lead our caucus." Last week, the New Hanover County Board of Education, where Lee resides, rejected over $3 million in funding from the General Assembly to pilot an artificial intelligence school security program. The General Assembly earmarked the pilot for New Hanover and Davidson counties in a Hurricane Helene bill at the end of 2024. And Lee was reportedly influential in pushing for advancing that legislation. New Hanover County is one of the state's most competitive political districts, often serving as a bellwether during the election season. Lee, who's managed repeated wins in the district, takes over this new leadership role as the Senate begins its biennium budget negotiations, which are unfolding in Raleigh right now. Congratulations to State Senator Michael Lee. We'll track his work as the new Senate Majority Leader in the North Carolina Senate. It's now 5:39. You're listening to the Carolina Journal News Hour. A busy week in Raleigh. We are tracking details this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour about a bill coming out of the North Carolina House as it relates to parents and curriculum that their children might be getting in the public school system. To go over some of those details this morning, Jeff Moore, CarolinaJournal.com, joins us on the News Hour. Jeff, parental rights has been a big discussion topic over the last 4 or 5 years. Republicans in the House moving forward with some legislation this morning. Can you walk us through the details?
Yeah, so we've got a bill that kind of approaches one of the veins of parental authority and rights in dealing with the classic situation of sex education in schools. So we've got a bill introduced by Representative John Torbett that is going to block all instruction on gender identity, sexuality, sexual preferences, the whole LGBTQ gambit, that whole social movement, everything that's involved and those sorts of discussions will be banned in public schools from kindergarten through 6th grade. So you won't have any discussions of any of those topics if this bill were to become law. And then starting in 7th grade through 12th grade, you would have more of those topics available, but you would require parental consent each and every year that you're going through to give for some of that sex and health education that you might be getting when you're discussing STDs, gender identity, sexuality, things of that nature. So once you're 7th grade and older, you'll be eligible for some of those things, but parents will be asked first whether or not they want their children to actually take those courses or go through those instructional materials, and will, of course, have an ability to opt out of that. It does some other things as well, as far as empowering parents to give more input on the kind of books and materials that are in school libraries. There will be a repository under this proposal of all of the instructional materials and books in a school library, so parents can review that. And the parents will also be given access to their children's library records. So if they're checking out books in 7th or 8th grade, of a certain nature that parents might want to know about, then they'll have access to those records as well. So it's all part and parcel of a big reaction movement to some of the more social justice, LGBT and gender kind of movements over the past several years. So they've got this bill pushing through the House. Unknown whether or not there's going to be critical support levels in the Senate, but with majorities, strong majorities across the House and the Senate here in North Carolina, you can imagine they'd have a pretty wide base of support.
Jeff, as we look at curriculum, as I understand it right now, these decisions are made currently by local boards of education. Local school boards kind of determine and figure out. There obviously is some regulation from the state on some level of curriculum, but some of these additional details are actually decided by local individuals that you elect. Is this a situation where maybe government should allow these decisions to be made locally? There's always this big power struggle over, your most local form of government is the one that's the most accountable to you. Opine on that, if you would, for us.
Yeah, precisely. That local control is usually the best control, and this bill would maintain the local entities, those local county school boards as the throughput filter for this. It would just lay the very basic kind of structure or parameters for kindergarten through sixth grade, that you don't actually introduce any of that material. And then the local school boards would be able to deliberate and figure out what kind of materials and what kind of instruction they're going to go for in the 7th through 12th grade. They would be required to get more parental input for such things, and they would all be kind of judged against legislation that barred it below a certain age. The idea being that even if a locality, we want to have localities have all the freedom that they can have in making those local decisions. But at some point, kids across North Carolina, whether they're in Carteret County or in Swain County, are viewed the same. And by the sponsors of this bill, their thinking is that a fifth grader or a kindergarten has no business being introduced to gender ideology, for example. So once you get into 7th grade and beyond, that would be a decision for your local school board to decide whether or not they get that instruction, and you would have parental consent involved in that as well. So there are multiple levels of accountability here. You keep the control at the local level to the best of your ability, but also bring the parents in more, so you don't have these cultural upheavals that we saw over the past several years, where you have instructional materials in these public schools that once the parents find out about it, they're marching down to the school board meeting and raising a ruckus and getting labeled domestic terrorists for opposing such policies. So with all of that in the rearview mirror, this legislation looks like it intends to clean some of that up and mitigate some of the effects of that instruction on the younger children, and then allow older children to explore it as long as they have their parents' permission.
Well, let me ask you about the timeline on this. It is, of course, early 2025 when we're having this discussion this morning. I'm surprised that this hadn't happened in years past, Jeff. I mean, you really saw the kind of cultural battlegrounds that you were talking about take place pretty much after schools were closed previous to COVID-19. Once everything was opened back up, you really started seeing this fight as parents got a bigger dive into their child's education as they were looking over their shoulder on Zoom when their kids were learning remotely. Does the timeline on this surprise you at all?
Yeah, it seems a little late for addressing some of these issues, but that's only in hindsight, where we're looking at it 2020. But since 2020, the wave of all of those social justice movements and a lot of these issues coming to the forefront in the media was so big that you could only tackle so many parts of it at a time. So obviously lawmakers had a lot on their hands in those couple of years after the emergence of the COVID pandemic. And this looks like going back to sweep up the remaining bits that may be kind of left unchecked, noticing probably with a lot of parental input of their own, legislators noticing that there are some gaps here in the coverage. And so this and other parental bill of rights for a medical bill of rights for knowing what their kids may be getting at the doctor's office or in the school nurse's office. That was a bill that was filed a week or two ago. So these things seem like the last couple of things that they're noticing need to be taken care of. And so they're looking at those this session.
Jeff, you've got the full bill, including some quotes from lawmakers. Where can folks get those additional details this morning?
Yeah, as always, CarolinaJournal.com for the latest on politics and policy in North Carolina.
Jeff Moore joins us this morning on the Carolina Journal News Hour. Where it's now 546, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. It's time to get another look at traffic this morning. We'll look at the roadways with Boomer Von Cannon.
Hey, thanks, Nick. In Iredell County.
We're headed back to Heist Brewery and Barrel Arts on Wednesday, April the 16th from 7 to 9 p.m. for WBT's News and Brews, and we'd love to see you there. All of your WBT friends will be there to raise a glass with you and talk about the news and politics of the day. It's WBT's News and Brews headed your way Wednesday, April the 16th at Heist Brewery and Barrel Arts. Visit WBT.com this morning for tickets and event details. 5:53 on the Carolina Journal News Hour, News Talk 1110, 99.3 WBT. We are tracking some information out of yesterday's April Council of State meeting, and we learned some additional details from the North Carolina Commissioner of Agriculture. That's Steve Troxler, who is now calling on the General Assembly for additional funding to help rebuild the state's Forest Service as wildfires continue to burn across the state. Backing up some comments he made in the March Council of State meeting, Commissioner Troxler stated that there are still over 100 open positions within the North Carolina Forest Service. They've also got worn-out helicopters, bulldozers, and other pieces of equipment as well. All of this to battle nearly over 1,800 wildfires that have burned across the state in the month of March, particularly in the West, where Hurricane Helene brought so much devastation in September of last year. That's a 104% increase over the average 891 wildfires that the state normally sees in the month of March. North Carolina Forest Service Assistant Commissioner Greg Hicks told Council of State members. He presented the agency heads with a rundown of the state's fire locations and containment levels, and some great news to pass along to you this morning out of Polk County. The Black Cove fire, which was burning well over very close to 4,000 acres, is now 93% contained, according to North Carolina Forest Service officials. And the Deep Woods fire, burning a little over 3,500 acres, is at 60% containment. Another fire burning in Swain County, the Alarcon 5 fire, 1,500 acres there, 62% containment. In Haywood County, the Rattlesnake Ranch fire, 1,865 acres, that sits at 24% containment this morning. And the Table Rock Complex fire in Transylvania County, currently burning at 574 acres, 32% containment there. Although recent rains have been a welcome sight, Hicks said that they still have the month of April to get through before the spring wildfire season officially ends on May the 1st. The state is also monitoring the Big Blue Ridge fire, which is currently burning in portions of Georgia. Steve Troxler said, unfortunately, 12 homes were lost in fires so far during the spring forest fire season, and he expects the season to get worse before it gets better, telling his fellow Council of State members that there will likely be another dry period in the fall during which the fires could ramp up again, and he asked for the legislature to help filling some of those open positions and purchasing new equipment to hopefully tamp down some of those risks. Democrat Governor Josh Stein assured Troxler that he would be in discussions with the North Carolina General Assembly to seek their input on funding requests. Troxler then went on to hold a press conference later in the day yesterday to discuss the crop loan disaster program that we did talk about, over $300 million being set aside for farmers across the state of North Carolina that had some level of crop loss, whether it be from Helene or other storms during the 2024 growing season. As we look at the wildfire risk this morning, the high humidity and breezy winds that we've seen across the state continue to add to those elements. And of course, all of the damaged trees that now lay and scatter across the western half of the state that were blown or knocked down during Hurricane Helene. Just the absolute perfect amount of fuel for those wildfires to really get going. We'll continue to track the details on wildfires right here on the Carolina Journal News Hour and, of course, on our website, carolinajournal.com. Well, that's going to do it for a Wednesday edition. WBT News is next, followed by Good Morning BT. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 5 to 6, right here on News Talk 1110 and 99.3 WBT.